Hello and welcome to the Aquarius Podcast. I'm your host, Randy Reed. This episode of the podcast is sponsored by OASE, and today my guest is also sponsored by OASE, Mr. George Farmer. So if you want to see the Biomaster in action, I will have links to George's YouTube channel in the show notes. Go and check it out, see what he's done to promote this product so you can see this thing working in a beautiful Planet aquarium. What more can I say than check out this awesome German-designed, Italian-built piece of engineering of aquarium marvel in action, and it's in the hands of a great aquascaper. What more could you want? Now, on to the interview. Today's date is Tuesday, July 2nd, 2019. My guest today is George Farmer. George is an internationally renowned aquascaper who travels all around sharing his passion. He's also a long-term contributor to Practical Fish Keeping magazine and is on their experts panel. If you're into plants and Googling information about them, you're likely to have come across one or many of his articles. So George, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Randy.
Absolutely. And I'm like shaking my fist in the air. I finally got somebody from England onto the podcast. And not just anybody from England, but I got George Farmer onto the podcast.
It's really cool to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
No, absolutely, man. And the fact that I'm going to play on this English thing a little bit more, your accent already bumps your IQ up like 30 points. So like everything you say, Americans and everybody else is going to be like, man, that's got to be truthful. It's coming from a guy with a British accent.
It's really funny you should say that. I get so much. I get quite a few trolls on my YouTube comments about my accent. They say your accent's so stupid. I don't understand. Why can't you speak in an American accent? They're like, well, one, I'm not from America, and
no.
two, I think my accent's okay.
Oh no! Oh, it's okay. So now I feel embarrassed because you said they're Americans. I was hoping they were from somebody else in the world.
Maybe they were. I think, you know what? I think a lot of non-native English speakers learn English from American TV, so they understand American spoken English better than English speaking English. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, definitely. I will say though, as a kid growing up, one of my favorite shows to watch was Are You Being Served?
Oh wow! Yeah, no, very well. Yeah,
Grace Brothers, man, I love that show. And right now, people are like, "Geez, they're like 2 minutes into this, and there hasn't been a single mention of fish." Yeah, are you being served? That's what the title of this episode is going to be. George Farmer on Are You Being Served?
That's awesome.
So George, you've got a very strong following, I would say, in social media. I don't have people on and talk specifically about YouTube very much, but as of right now, I mean, you're just about to crest on 100,000 subscribers, which for anybody, I mean, that's a huge accomplishment. So I'm sure that's going to happen here in the next like week or two, or whenever that happens. But it's going to be very soon. So congrats on that.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, and kind of what I'm building towards is, if somebody just got into the hobby now and they just dove into, planted tanks and aquascaping, they're more than likely going to come across one of your videos and they're going to be like, man, this George Farmer guy is putting out these, awesome aquascapes, beautiful cinematography, videography, whatever you want to call it. And they might not get that backstory, right? They might not know like who George Farmer is, and I think that's one of the challenges that I have with social media. And once you start getting such a large following, is that people lose your backstory. And one of the things that I strove for with this podcast, and I continue to strive for, is to paint the picture of what that backstory is for people. So for you, like, what are your earliest memories fish keeping? Because I have to imagine it's not you woke up one day at like 6 years old and you're banging out amazing nature aquariums.
No, not quite, no. I actually came to the hobby relatively late. I think my first ever recollection of an aquarium was at primary school. I don't know what you guys call it over there, but I think I was 4 or 5 years old, and we had an aquarium in the reception of the school. And I remember neon tetras specifically because I just remember them being these bright blue and red and, iridescent colours. And then fast forward a few years, my uncle kept a tropical aquarium, freshwater, and I was obsessed with that. And then I didn't really have any interaction at all with aquariums until my first marriage. And actually, my ex-wife said to me, oh, let's get an aquarium. So I was like, yeah, it's cool. And then, I've always been quite into nature, and I like the outdoors. I like forests, I like rivers and the sea. And I thought it'd be really cool to actually have something that's quite, natural looking. So, a planted tank seemed, logical. I wanted to go freshwater because I couldn't really afford marine back then. And yeah, quickly got into planted tanks and discovered quite soon after that discovered the work of Takashi Amano. And this was what really, this was like an epiphany. It really blew my mind, literally. And this is the direction I knew I wanted to take my hobby. I became pretty obsessed pretty quickly by it and started searching all the forums. Looked up to Tom Barr, manically researched all of his articles, EI, and yeah, just became super obsessed about learning about not just like the art of aquascaping, but almost the science as well. So became a bit of a sponge, and was reading Practical Fish Keeping. We talked about this in the introduction, but the interesting thing was I became a subscriber to PFK. This was 2003, and the articles back then were talking about how they had planted tank and aquascaping articles in there, but they were really kind of conflicting. A lot of the information was conflicting with what I was reading about from the likes of Tom Barr and these kind of new methods of growing plants, like adding nitrates and phosphates, using CO2 injection, using high levels of circulation, huge water changes. All these things were, massively in conflict, which was, what was being written about in Practical Fish Keeping. So I started keeping my aquarium in this way, the new way, if you like, with EI, estimative index, high levels of lighting, growing carpets of glossostigma, which no one could seem to do back then in the UK. And so I actually wrote a letter into Practical Fish Keeping explaining, really love your magazine, but I think some of your information is outdated. I'm having great success using these methods. Here's a photo to prove it. And they got back to me really quickly, and they said, oh, George, we love your tank. Can we come and visit you? Can we come and do a reader visit? And this was fantastic for me. I was like, yes, I've made it. I'm going to be in Practical Fish Keeping magazine. And I was super excited. But at the time, I was in the Royal Air Force, and I was about to be deployed to the Falkland Islands. And I'd stripped the tank down, packed all my gear up for 4 months, knowing that I wouldn't be able to maintain the tank, obviously, in my absence. So I wrote an email back and sorry, guys, going away for 4 months, but, I can write. Would you like me to write some articles for you on this new way of growing plants? And they were up for it. And this was really the game changer for me in terms of really focusing on creating content back then, of these new ways of growing plants, aquascaping, and this passion of mine, which was a hobby, an all-encompassing hobby, but also a passion for me to share my hobby with others. And this is where it all began. So this is back in, this is now 2005, 2006 when I started writing for Practical Fish Keeping.
Oh wow! And so from once you got into the hobby, like your wife at the time had said, "Let's get an aquarium." You start getting into nature aquariums. What's the duration that passes before you actually sent this letter to Practical Fish Keeping and they were interested back in you?
Yeah, it was really quick. So I bought my first tank in 2003, and then I think I sent that letter 2005.
Wow!
So from zero to sort of PFK contributor in 2-3 years. Yeah,
that's crazy, man. That is definitely soaking up information like a sponge for sure.
It is, and I think it's interesting. I think you can apply this to any kind of walk in life. If you're so interested and passionate about something, you can just take it all in, and you can just learn so quickly. And I think actually it was an advantage to come into the hobby a little bit later into my adult life, or a little bit later in general, because I I was an open book to these new ways of working. I wasn't. I didn't grow up with the kind of old school methodologies that I took as verbatim, and I took as as the truth in inverted commas. I was open to these new kind of ways. Guys like Tom Barr were talking about, which were kind of, people were just thought, what, adding nitrates and phosphates into your planted tank? That's crazy. That's just going to grow algae. But now we know that plants use these.
So what were the tenets then of kind of the old guard, right? So we know that with Tom Barr and kind of the new guard, the new tenets are nitrates and all that.
Yeah. So the kind of old school ways, and they still work. Let's just get that out there. There are so many ways to achieve success. The ways that I promote and Tom promotes, etc., aren't the only way and the only way that work by any means. There are many roads to success. But the kind of old school methods, as I like to call it, are, well, the methods that I was kind of arguing against, if you like. They were saying, limit nitrates, even use nitrate removal resins, use phosphate remover, make sure you use like really low Kelvin rating lights, mercury vapor lighting. Make sure you use undersoil heating, use garden soil if you can, topped off with like a fine gravel. Limit circulation, have the tank's volume. Say you've got a 10-gallon tank, have less than 1 times that tank's volume per hour turning over. So if you think of the absolute reverse to all of those, this is what the kind of the new guard is, then these new methods. So high levels of circulation, no need for undersoil heating, a complete substrate rather than, a garden substrate, like a commercially prepared substrate, adding nitrates and phosphates, dosing fertilizers every day.
And how contentious? Like, so you start writing these articles. I would have to imagine that some of that old school, some of those contributors, I mean, like kind of spell that out for me. Like, how did that play out?
I got in loads of trouble. I even got a lawsuit against.
Oh my goodness!
Serious?
Wow.
Yeah. So I can't tell you. I can't talk too much detail, but
sure,
it's past. But I had I had a guy sort of employed a private investigator to find out where I lived, so he could send me the papers to serve.
Wow.
Yeah, because the methods I was promoting were in complete contrast to his methods, and in his words, I was discrediting him personally.
Wow. And I would assume that all resolved in your favor.
Yes.
Wow.
He got the sack, and I carried on writing for another 10 years plus.
Wow, that is crazy. That's something. Yeah, I'd never heard that before. Nor would I ever think that in this hobby, somebody could take it to that level. But we're all humans, and we're all prone to doing things that I don't even want to describe it. But that's just crazy.
Yeah, and that's an exclusive for your podcast, so you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, George. Thank you. Because it almost sounds like what you're describing is, I'm kind of putting the pieces together. Maybe some people have already kind of made this connection, but it feels like academia light. And what I mean by academia light is, and I love academics, is you do research, you consolidate, and you condense your findings, and you put it into a paper, and then you publish that paper, and then your peers, they kind of do trial by fire, and they test it, right, to see if they can get those same kind of results. And so kind of this 2005 into 2010, whatever it may be, it kind of feels like academia light, where you're saying, hey, this is what me and these other people are doing. We're having this success. And then there's kind of the old school. Maybe they're challenging. There's some back and forth in articles. And then ultimately, like you said, there's success from both methods, but maybe what's easier, maybe what's more simple, maybe what might provide different results that are more pleasing to people. That's kind of what is coming through to the forefront, that now this is becoming kind of the standard. And who knows, maybe in 10 years somebody's going to write and be like, George Farmer, you need to try this method, and we'll all be like, what is this about?
Exactly. And that's the great thing about this hobby. It's always moving forward. There's always developments. And I think this is the danger with. I'm not pointing to any individuals, but I think the danger is if once you think you know it all, I think that's the time to stop, because you know yourself, Randy, that the hobby is so complex and it's evolving all the time. And for me, that's the most beautiful thing about it, because I can. I'm very active on various forums, not so much forums anymore, but Facebook groups. And, they're not equal, obviously, but there are some very good ones. There's some excellent contributors out there. And I will learn something new every day about an aquarium plant, or an aquarium plant methodology, or some sort of aquascaping technique. And for me, this is fantastic. And to the point where I've set up aquascapes for retailers or private clients, years ago, and they're now at the point where I would say they have at least equal to or more knowledge than I do, and are a better aquascaper than I am. And actually, that for me, that's like a tick in the box. That's like fantastic, and this is one of the best things about the hobby for me, because it is limitless. The potential to create, the potential to learn, it's just beyond comprehension, really.
I mean, it really is. When you take, let's just look at fish and plants. I mean, when you just take the fish and plant combination that's out there, that's limitless. When you take hardscape, the types of wood, the types of rock, that's limitless. When you take an art like aquascaping, and I'm very much going to frame it like it is subjective, but it's absolutely an art. And you see what guys like yourself and these other world-class aquascapers, how they use depth and shadows and visual tricks, and it's astounding. And I feel like the amount of control that you would probably have more control if you were pushing paint around a canvas, and I don't mean to belittle that style of art, than you would dealing with substrate and live plants and wood, just the behavior of all that, and then making sure that when you fill that thing up with water, you're being as gingerly as possible.
Yes, agreed. It is the ultimate 3D art form, because you're sculpturing, but it's evolving by itself, because it's a living entity, and it's so complex. You've got so many things going on at once, at all different rates, and the more I think about it, the more infinitely crazy it is, which is great, and I know that I'll never get bored of it, and that's another beautiful aspect of aquascaping.
Yeah, and I would challenge anybody out there that's not in the hobby, or if you have friends that you're trying to get in the hobby, you've got family members, if you take one of the Takashi Amano books what's the word I'm looking for, the coffee table-esque kind of book that you always have out, because it's just beautifully illustrated. If you hand that to just any random person on the street and say, hey, does this look appealing to you? I mean, I would be so hard-pressed for somebody to look at that and be, nah, that doesn't look cool. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And
it's a universal language that the vast majority of people will appreciate. Yeah. And the great thing is they don't even know why, because it connects with the soul, and you can't really, it connects with something inside of you which goes beyond the normal physical realm, I think. And I think it's all to do with this innate requirement for humans to connect with nature. And I think that's where it's a really special art form and a hobby, because it really does connect people, and it connects people on so many different levels. But yeah, it's fantastic. And you're right, you could show anyone a picture of an Amano aquascape, and I challenge anyone not to be impressed by it, no matter what their level of experience is.
Yeah, and I would even say, I think that not that your videos aren't something that somebody that is very experienced in the hobby couldn't watch, but I think the way that you present what you do, how you frame things, how you carry yourself in your videos, and how you explain things, that is very. I think you do an excellent job to make it an inviting experience for somebody new to the hobby. I mean, there's maybe 2 or 3 people that are producing YouTube content that when I got back into it, I was watching their videos, and you were one of them. And the way that you approach things, it's like, man, this guy is super calming. He's got the British accent, check. He's not hitting me with all of these crazy video transitions, and it's all very logical. It's all very well explained. I have no idea what these scientific names are on the plants that he's talking about, cryptocorae and all that stuff. It's way over my head. But at the time, though, I think it's exactly what I needed to see. Here's somebody that has passion, has skill, and is breaking it down at a level where if I wanted to try to emulate that or take elements of what he's doing, I could do that and be successful. And so I would say, well done, George, on that. And I would, continue to do that and bring that style of video, because it's going to help to bring more and more people into this hobby.
Well, first of all, thank you for that feedback. I'm very grateful to hear that. And my passion is, my absolute passion, and my kind of life mission statement is to promote aquascaping and make it more accessible to more people, because I fundamentally believe that aquascaping can improve people's lives. It is therapeutic. The whole process is therapeutic, from having that empty tank to coming up with a plan, to the physical planting of it, to watching it grow, maintaining it, and then finally, if you're into photography or filmmaking, you can snap a picture or make a film and share it with the world. And then it's quite a romantic notion, but it does help to make the world a better place. It might be only a tiny bit better, but it is making a positive change in people's lives. And YouTube is a big passion of mine now, because for me it is the most effective vehicle to execute this mission of promoting aquascaping. For number one, it's free to use, which is fantastic. YouTube, anyone can create a YouTube account, and it doesn't cost any money. And then that's great. It's free online storage for one, and then you have the opportunity to share your passion with the world. And it just makes sense for me to make it accessible, and that's just me being genuine, because I can't think of any other way to do it. The reason I make the videos in the way I do is because that's just me. And if anyone's seen any workshops that I do for real, and live in front of people, it's very similar. And the way I write for magazines, and I'm writing my own book at the moment as well, it's all very practical, step by step, logical, because that's how I learn, and that's hopefully how other people learn as well.
No, that's awesome. So on the note of the book, what's your kind of tentative release date right now?
It's supposed to be finished off to the publishers in October this year. So I'm hoping for early 2020 release.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. I'm trying to write it. I've written a bit of it already, and it's exciting, and I tried to work out how many words I've written on aquascaping since I started, and I think it's over 1 million words.
Wow.
So when you try to kind of condense all of that into like 40,000, so the challenging thing was actually getting structure, like a rough sort of, structure to it. And once I nailed that, it's actually not too hard to fill it out. But it's kind of, the tricky thing is trying to get all that, all what I think is the most important information across in those 40,000 words. That's the challenge.
Who would you say your audience is going to be for this book? The beginning aquascaper? Somebody.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it will hopefully appeal to all levels, but a beginner to intermediate. This fits in with my mission, of promoting aquascaping, and there's more people that aren't into aquascaping. That the balance is massively in the favour of the beginners in terms of market, and for me to have this, try to execute the mission of promoting it, especially to new people. It makes sense to go beginner, But hopefully it will appeal, to more experienced people as well. There might be some sort of tricks and tips in there that a lot of people may not have thought about. There'll be stuff in there that I haven't talked about in videos. I want to keep some like real gems in there that I've not made public yet.
No, definitely.
So gives people some motivation to buy the book.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm a huge book nerd. My fish and plant book collection is definitely growing, and this is one where you've got me excited. So 2020, I'll put my deposit down, and I'll even pay that extra freight to get it from the UK to me because I want a signed copy from you.
Of course, yeah, more than welcome.
Excellent. Yeah, no, I absolutely love books, and I think that I think there's just like YouTube is great, forums are great, but there's something about when somebody's gone through the effort to actually publish content through, and I know Amazon does their print on order. I used to work for them, and I've seen these facilities where kind of anybody can make a book for the most part, but to actually go through publishing, to go through a publisher, like those are, there's barriers to entry there, right? And so you're not just going to kind of slap something haphazardly. You're going to put some serious effort and thought into it. And so to me, that makes it that much more special than just, here's this dude's, 1-page long post on a forum. Like they're just on completely different levels. Obviously, you're going to pay for the book, but for the amount of effort that you're putting into it, and then the retail price of the book, it's going to be like, that's just a good deal for the consumer, especially if you're into plants. And I would have to assume that there's probably going to be some pretty awesome pictures in this thing too.
I hope so. Yeah. It's interesting. The actual, I think I can tell you this. It's going to be a 9x9 inch as well, so it's like a really cool book to open. So when you open it up, it's obviously a 2:1 ratio, which works really well for like a full tank shot. And when it's closed, it's the square. So this is really trendy at the moment. The square, obviously Instagram squares, and I'm really excited by it. I'm trying to get some exclusive content in terms of photography as well. So I have my sort of home aquascape gallery running right now, which is going to be used for a lot of the kind of step-by-step tutorial kind of articles, and there'll obviously be some high-end photography from those as well. So yeah,
no, that sounds great. I'm committed. Where do I go to Kickstarter or plop some money down at Barnes and Nobles or Amazon to put my money down for this thing?
I don't think it's available for pre-order yet. The publisher, yeah, the publisher's Skyhorse. I think they're quite big. They're in New York. They've done, I think, 8,000 titles, so they're quite a big deal.
Cool.
With they're good. They've got a good distribution network, so I'm sure you can find a copy.
Yeah,
relatively easily when it comes out.
That's legit, man, and we'll definitely make sure that I'll keep the audience posted when that is available, because I do love promoting any book that's related to the hobby that's providing good information. So that's free publicity for me, my man.
Thank you so much.
So
I appreciate any. Let's get loads of the book. It's all about going back to the mission to promote aquascaping, and the book is just another enabler to do that. Yeah. So it's all good.
Well, I mean, we're focusing so much on the design, the aesthetics, but having these planted tanks is really setting you up to also be a better fish keeper as well. I mean, it's going to really help you, keeping healthier stock that's less stressed out. I mean, even if you're taking plants from Southeast Asia and you're putting them with fish from the Amazon basin, like they'll still thrive in there. And so, there's so much focus on plants and design, but, fish, a lot of fish love an aquascape tank. I mean, the tanks that I have that are heavily planted, I mean, the fish are just constant. Like these rainbow fish are just flashing color, and I'm pretty sure there's no Java fern or a Ponageton where those guys come from that are in this tank, but they love it though,
Absolutely. I mean, the benefits of an aquarium plant are just absolutely huge. For the listeners that don't know, that a plant produces oxygen, it uses up harmful nutrients such as ammonia, it provides shelter and security. It helps, in a healthy planted aquarium, it helps to prevent algae, as you guys say. There's so many benefits to a planted aquarium. It's almost nonsensical not to have plants in your aquarium, even if you have herbivorous fish, you can still get away with like Anubias or Java ferns or floating plants. There's really almost no excuse not to have an aquarium plant in your tank. And the more plants, the better as well, because it just creates more benefits, more oxygen, more nutrient removal, more
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And as much as I hate the duckweed explosions, they're
Oh.
they're a great suck for all the nasty things in your tank. They're that floating plant that can pull the carbon dioxide from the air and really give them that boost. Which is why once you get freaking one duckweed, those things go crazy.
Oh yeah, it is. It can be a menace.
And
definitely.
I shared this anecdote before that anecdote I should say. I think I said anecdote. So I shared this anecdote before where when I first got back into the hobby, and I remember somebody talking about duckweed and how, oh man, like, I don't want any duckweed, yada yada yada. And I was getting into planted tanks, and I'm like, I would take some duckweed. I just want to grow anything. And I swear to God, man, I've been trying to get rid of that duckweed, and it hops from tank to tank. I need to do full on sterilization process of nets and just, this duckweed, like I don't think I can ever shake it. It's going to be in one tank or another for just the end of time or until I get, I think even if I got out of the hobby, it would still somehow show up. I would just open up my toilet lid and there's like the one piece of duckweed because you would always, you dump your duckweed in the toilet, which apparently I should feed it to my chickens that it's nutritious for them. So I need to start doing that.
There you go. Yeah. I didn't know that. That's a top tip. How many tanks do you have?
Okay, so in this little recording room, I've got two. I've got a 75 and a 40, and those are going to be my heavily planted kind of display tanks. And then I built out it's like an 11-foot by 14, 13-foot room, insulated room in my garage, which I think you guys call the garage something different, right? Like what do you call your garage?
We call it a garage.
I thought you call a carriage, or is it
a garage?
You call it a garage?
We call it we spell it garage. Yeah, a garage.
Oh, okay. I thought there was another more British term for garage, but okay.
No, garage. Yeah.
Okay. So so this is in my garage, and then in there I have I think it's about 30 tanks right now that range from 10s up to 40 breeders, and I'm actually taking out the west wall. Has a 215 gallon. That's actually completely coming out, and I'm going to put another rack in there, and that's going to be another 3-tier rack that's going to add let's see here, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So I'll be adding 11 more tanks. So pushing 40, 42 tanks in the fish room.
Wow, that's a lot of work.
Well, it is. One thing that really makes it possible is the auto water change system. I've talked about it numerous times before, but with where I am professionally, with where I am with family life, having a toddler and a 2-month-old, if I didn't have auto water changes in there, it would just be like it'd be turn the lights off on the hobby, have one or two kind of bigger display tanks, and that's about it. But having those 20% auto water changes every single day, just going through an overflow, draining out of the house, that really makes it all possible. But at the same time, with auto water change, most of my tanks will still have pothos in there, which I struggled a couple episodes ago, or was it last episode, with remembering the word freaking pothos. That drove me crazy. Like I'm mid interview and I couldn't think of the name pothos. It was nuts.
Wow.
And then also some planted crypts and Anubias tied to stuff, and then also hornwort. I like to put hornwort in tanks.
Why not?
So so even though I'm doing those water changes, there's still those benefits of having the plants. I'm trying to breed fish, so it's places for fry to hide, for them to eat the little microorganisms, and all those benefits that come with having plants in your aquarium.
Absolutely. The power of plants. You can't deny it.
Yeah, most definitely. So George, let's start leveraging on this travel that you've done. You're like international aquascaping man of mystery. I've seen you in New Jersey, like in person. We've talked in New Jersey. We've talked in Orlando, Florida more recently. I see your posts and you're like in Budapest, Hungary, or you're all over the place, man. So what's some of the most recent travel you've done?
Last week I was in Denmark, with Tropica Aquarium Plants. That's their headquarters. So I do a lot of work with those guys, helping out with some video production and marketing, etc. And the week before that, I was in Germany, in Hamburg. We scaped a 7,500 gallon
Wow.
plant a tank for a zoo, which was pretty insane. Before that, I was in Madrid quite recently. I did a workshop in Madrid for a beautiful aquascaping store. And yeah, this year I've done lots of places. Too many to list. But
Have you done any? Have you gone to Asia yet? Anything there?
no, do you know what? That's the only place I've not done. I was invited to China very recently. Actually, they do a big aquascaping contest and a big show over there. But I'm actually, the week that it's running is when I'm actually getting married to my new wife.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I can't really.
So you're talking about SIPs, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so
Yes.
so I'll be there.
Yeah.
Corey and I will be going to SIP. So that's given the two, getting married or going to an aquascaping event. I mean, obviously you're choosing the one that's going to keep you from getting in trouble. But
Yeah, exactly.
maybe the.
I'm sure I'll be going at some point. I'd also love to go to Japan, obviously with the home of the late great Takashi Amano, with the Nature Aquarium Gallery there, and also their general kind of their koi industry, and they're just and the whole culture absolutely fascinates me. I'd love to go to Japan.
I mean, I'm completely with you. I actually even pitched the idea of working 2 years for Amazon in Tokyo. I'm like, hey, there's this position that's kind of, that's pretty much on par with what I'm doing now. We could do it in Tokyo for a couple years. And at the time, my oldest, he was like 6 months, and she's like, no. I'm like, come on, this would be such a great experience. But that would have been super cool. So I'm enthralled also with wanting to go to Asia. And I mean, it's just it's China, it's Japan. I'm half Korean, so going to South Korea and seeing what their fish scene looks like, Indonesia, Malaysia, all of these.
Those guys,
I mean,
are really
Singapore.
serious.
I mean, all of these. Even the Philippines. There's going to check out like the actual fish breeders, and then there's going like collecting in the wild in Borneo, and just all of these. It's just I mean, we're not even like, we've never even been to the continent, but there's years and years and years of exploration before you can say, check that box and say, yep, I've done all Asia now. I'm good.
Oh yeah, there's so much out there, and I think it just blown my mind. I can just imagine it now. It's just to take it to another level going out there.
Yeah, and then when you watch the food travel shows, the food looks amazing. The street food, oh my goodness.
Yeah, so vibrant, and it's just definitely on my to-do list, and I'm sure I'll be going next year at some point. To Japan at least, and then hopefully to China. I'd love to do Indonesia, Borneo, and there's opportunities as well to do sort of expeditions and things like this. Yeah, to do some wild collecting. I think that would be absolutely fantastic.
Do you ever?
One of the.
I'm sorry. No, you go.
One of the coolest things I did actually on a relatively recent trip is, in fact, it was on the same trip that we met in Orlando. Me and Chris Lukaup went on an expedition to Rainbow Springs in Florida. Did some, took a little boat out and then did some scuba diving along the river. And there was just so many cool aquatic plants like Ludwigia and Sagittaria. Those are cool little fish. I did a vlog on it for the channel. It's awesome. Chris is such a cool guy as well. I don't know if you've met Chris.
Yeah, Luke Hab,
yeah.
He is I mean, he's a literal former rock star.
Yeah.
Traveled the world, playing bass for like a German rock band, and now he's publishing papers and describing and naming species of crayfish, and that guy is crazy in an awesome way. Super cool guy. Yeah, very, very, and even with all of that, incredibly humble guy. Incredibly humble.
Yes. Oh yeah. He's a really, really cool guy, and very, real deep character as well. We spent 3 hours in a car together, and we just went down the rabbit hole chatting about all sorts of stuff. I'm sure you can imagine.
Yeah. Definitely. So is Blue Springs? Is it really that clear?
Yeah, it's insane.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was lucky because we went to the Rainbow Springs, and then Chris went on his own the next day, to some springs that he visited on previous years, and apparently it was really bad, like loads of algae everywhere and polluted and stuff. So he was really upset, actually, because it obviously, the environmental strains that have been placed upon these natural systems is a real shame. But yeah, a really cool guy, and I'd love to go exploring with him, maybe a bit further afield as well. So
yeah, I think,
who knows?
I think us Americans, we tend to forget that, and I actually didn't realize this to a certain extent, but the fish collecting that we can do between Florida, between Texas, between the southern states like Alabama, the native killifish that we have, the Fungulus genus, there's a decent amount of kind of aquarium fish collecting that we can do here. And then, depending on where you are, some of the darter species that we have that are just absolutely gorgeous fish. And, you think of collecting and we automatically assume, South America, Southeast Asia, maybe some people think India, I don't know, Africa for sure, Rift Lakes. But, you can hop on one of our domestic airlines for, I don't know, less than $200 round trip if you're getting it at the right time. And you can go out and you can go collecting wild fish, and you don't have to bring them back. You can just collect and put them back. And, obviously follow your local or the state Department of Wildlife guidelines and rules and regulations and all that stuff. But, I mean, you had a chance to go into Florida, and thankfully you didn't get eaten by an invasive python or an alligator.
Yeah, I mean, Chris was he doesn't really care, I think. That's his. And I'm like, on the alligators in here, and he's like, yes, hopefully we'll get to see some. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm actually in the water now, and I can't outswim an alligator. And he's like, no, don't worry about it.
You're just with me, man. I was, the whole time we're in Orlando, every body of water, regardless of how small it is, in my head, I'm like, there's an alligator in there. There is for sure an alligator. And what was funny, Corey and I and Ryan from Wild Fish Tank's YouTube channel, we went out wild fish collecting kind of impromptu. And people were like, oh, you shouldn't be so concerned about the alligators as you should, what is it, the water moccasins or the cottonmouths or just some nasty poisonous snake that they have there. I'm like, I guess there were two nasty things I should have been watching out for.
Yeah, but sometimes it's best not to know, I guess.
Oh, totally, yeah. And like Corey is just fearless, man. He's just tromping through the swamp, looking. He's overturning all of these, the sticks and floating logs and patches of leaf litter with his hands. And dude's fearless. And I'm like, man, this guy's going to get bitten. He's going to get eaten. I'm going to be out of a job. My boss is going to get eaten by an alligator. This is going to suck. But obviously that didn't happen. So we were okay. But those freaking things are in the water, though, for sure.
That's crazy.
So
yeah, we're not so lucky in the UK. We don't have any decent stuff. It's all cold, so cold here. So we don't get any tropical stuff here at all. It's pretty far and few between.
Is there any native, like smaller native fish that people like, shinery kind of fish, I guess?
Yeah, we have like sticklebacks. Have you heard of these?
I've definitely heard of the name. Yeah.
Yeah, but they tend to thrive in cooler water. So you probably need a chiller in the aquarium in a normal central heated home. There are other species, but the name forgets me. There are a couple of aquatic plant species that you can grow as well, like calatriki, hornwort as well, which
Mm-hmm.
And then there's like the invasive stuff, like Ageria and things like this, but nothing too fancy.
So back to your international travel. What's been something, I guess, since you started this? Like, what's been the most mind-blowing experience that you were just floored?
Oh wow, that's quite easy. Florestas Submersas, which was Takashi Amano's final work, which he created for the Oceanarium in Lisbon, in Portugal. So the world's largest nature aquarium. So it's 40 meters long. So what's that? 120 feet.
Jeez.
But it's like a U shape, but in a square formation. So you've got two sides and then one sort of one thing going straight along. So you walk in and you're completely encapsulated by 120 feet of aquarium, and I think it's 40,000 gallons, and it's just Takashi Amano's best ever work, but absolutely massive. And it was created, I think it was 4 years ago now, and he passed away in August 2015, and it opened. Yeah, I can't remember the exact day it opened, but when I got there, it was over 3 years old, and it 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 was just. I never. The first thing is I never got to meet Takashi Amano, which is one of my life's biggest regrets because he's the reason I'm here doing this hobby, and now I've got a career in it. So this guy has been more than an influence in my life. So I never got to meet him, which is very sad. And but to see his final work still in all its glory, I don't mind admitting I actually cried. I walked in there, the music's so powerful. It was such an emotional experience. I was with Emma, my fiance at the time, and I just wept, just because it was just so overwhelmingly beautiful, and it was just, yeah, it was just amazing. I can't really put it into words.
Yeah, I get the feeling that this is going to be one of those experiences in life that no photo, no video is going to capture the enormity and the power of this display. I mean, maybe display is too weak of a word to describe it, but this creation.
Yeah.
That you just have to go there in person, and it's almost I guess as an aquarist, as a planted tank enthusiast or a planted tank appreciator, like this is a bucket list thing, right? Like this is just a bucket list.
Yeah.
You have to go to Lisbon. Thankfully for me, my wife has family in Lisbon.
Wow.
Benfica,
Yeah.
one of the local soccer teams, or they're in their Premier League. Basically, they play there. They're from Lisbon. So I've got numerous reasons that are drawing me to Lisbon. That more than likely, I would say within a decade. Man, I hope this thing is still up and running because talking to my
I mean, it is. It was planned to be a temporary exhibit, but they're basically going to keep it going, and hopefully going to keep it going for as long as possible. But it's fascinating because they have two permanent members of staff from ADA, Amano's company, Aqua Design Amano. They have two Japanese guys there full time on a 3-month rota, and they maintain the aquarium every evening. I think
Wow.
for 4 hours every evening, and on a Sunday, all day Sunday. And then they do this for 3 months, and then there's another two guys that come over and do it for 3 months, and then the guys fly back and they just swap over every
Wow.
3 months.
Do you know some of the specs as far as like the backstory? How long it took Amano to create this masterpiece, and maybe what was his inspiration for it?
I don't know fine details. I know that they employed, I think, about 40 aquascapers to help out, a mixture of European guys and guys from ADA Japan. Quite a few of my sort of aquascaping friends, European friends, were involved with the project. There's some crazy stats, like X amount of tons of hardscape and aquasoil, and obviously thousands and thousands of pots of plants. The specs are out there. It might be worth you doing a separate interview, to be honest, on like interview like Yuri's, Yuri's JS, German. He would probably be happy to give you a full interview just on that. I mean, that'd be fascinating for the listeners, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, just however they figured out flow and how much CO2 they're probably going through in that thing. Like it just seems incredible.
Crazy. Yeah, it's just and I think the most impressive thing is the size, but the technicality of how they keep it algae free. The water's crystal clear. The plants are just so healthy, and because they're in such a large aquarium, they grow to their potential, which you realise in your little aquarium at home. You're almost sort of suffocating these plants. So you get to see them, in all their glory. The fish are obviously growing to their maximum potential, and it really makes you realise that the power of nature. I think it's just so powerful. The whole experience, visually, spiritually, it was just yeah, it's just absolutely. Even my fiance, she likes aquascapes, and thankfully, because I've always talking about it and doing it. But it moved her as well. And you could see the other visitors who probably had very little experience of aquascapes, if any, were all awestruck. It
Wow.
just literally people just standing there with their jaws wide open, just like, what the hell is this? This is just another level of nature.
Well, I mean, this is like the second time now that, as you've been talking about it, I'm just looking at the waveform of our audio, our conversation, but just trying to envision myself there. Like, I'm just getting goosebumps from how you're describing this thing, and it's just, it's notching itself up. It's moving up on my bucket list. I've talked, to so many guests now, and I've always one of the things I always bring up is going collecting in the wild, and so I'll be going down to Peru in August,
Wow,
so like in a month to go collecting down there. But
yeah,
now, like, it was always kind of there, like going out and to check this thing out whenever I go to Lisbon. But now it's almost like I need to make sure that I'm in tune with the news on this thing. So if they're ever planning to decommission it, I need to hop on like the next flight to Lisbon to
yeah. You need
experience
to
this
go.
thing. Yeah.
Absolutely, and I'd encourage any of your listeners, if they can get there, if it's in their budget, or even if it's there not, it's just, if you're interested in aquariums or nature or life, if you're interested in life, then you need to see this thing, because it is just, yeah. I was a bit worried that it had been hyped up so much. I'd seen videos of it, I'd heard interviews, seen magazine articles, and I was worried that it would disappoint because it had been hyped up so much, but it didn't at all. And it's so moving. The music that's playing in the background was written specifically by, I can't remember the composer's name, but a world famous composer was commissioned to write this piece of music, a piece of classical music, purely for the exhibit.
Wow.
And it plays on a loop, and it's just so moving. It has Amano's sort of life story as you walk in on these big sort of posters, illuminated posters, so you can read some background. And yeah, it's just really powerful, and it just sums up. For me, it kind of summed up what he did for the hobby, and for me personally, he introduced me to aquascaping, which has changed my life infinitely for the better. I used to be in the military. I did bomb disposal. I was involved with lots of horrible kind of events and experienced traumatic things. And aquascaping was a hobby which was great because it kind of helped me relax from these things. And then when I decided to take aquascaping into a full-time career, it was only because Amano gave me this direction that I knew I wanted to take with aquascaping. This nature aquarium, and filled me with enough passion to be able to want to communicate this passion to other people. So as far as I'm concerned, he is the fundamental reason that I do what I do now, and to see his last ever creation, that was why I think it was so powerful to see it. It was,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean that all just, what you just said brings things into so much more clarity of why aquascaping is so much more passionate, or so passionate to you. Your experience in your military service, and the calming effects. Like, and one of the things I need to do is have an actual psychologist on the show that's done documented research on calming effects of aquariums and various other things to talk about that. But to hear it firsthand from yourself, and it really being this driving force to get into the hobby, and you seeing the benefit to your life for it, and knowing that other people can have that same calming effect in our digital bombardment, constantly clickbaity news headliney story. I mean, to be able to immerse yourself in that, and just to calm and to take a breath, and just relax. And enjoy this piece of maybe quasi nature, but nature nonetheless in your home, or wherever you are. I mean, that's just such a powerful thing.
Absolutely. And the older I get, and the more I realise that we need to take a break, from yeah, from this digital consumerist sort of age, and aquascaping is another form of mindfulness, because even the act of maintaining an aquarium, it's mindfulness, because you're just focusing on that one task. And if you're focusing on it and you're concentrating on it enough, then your mind isn't full of all this other crap that's going on, and this is really important for humans, because we're not designed to listen to all these horror stories that are going on around the world all the time. And we're designed, I personally believe, we come from like this caveman times where we lived amongst nature, and we had the hunter gatherer thing and the foraging thing. And modern humans now are so far removed from the original human, that in some strange way, I guess, the act of aquascaping, or just the act of maintaining the aquarium, planting an aquarium, or sitting and just enjoying an aquarium, it somehow reconnects you to this kind of ancient human, and this desire, this human need to be connected with nature.
Yeah, I mean, totally. We're interacting with life, and I agree with you 100% on this. That for all of the benefits and all of the convenience, and just how much more efficient our lives can be with technology, we need to set time in our day to not be efficient, and to not be efficient, and to deal with nature, and to interact with nature. And it always brings a smile to my face. My son goes in the fish room, he lifts up the little lids, and he says hi to the fishies. He says, hi, fishies, and he's being like, he's 2 years old and he knows plecos. He actually goes and gets the frozen cubes of rapashi from the freezer, and he plops in. He knows which tanks to put it in. He knows angelfish by name. He knows guppies by name. Like, these living little organisms that we're doing our best to give them, good environments to live in our fish room, and then in this display room. Like, that's such a reassuring thing for me, that he's being exposed to that, and that we're spending 30 minutes doing that, or however long it is, and that's not 30 minutes of him having screen time where he's engaging with this digital device. Now, having a 2-month-old at the same time, the digital device can be a lifesaver at times, right? Like, don't get me wrong, but there's that balance, and there's you've almost you got to turn off the streaming TV. You've got to know that you don't have to binge watch every single episode, and that there's more to life, and there's and actually, I'll go off on a little tangent. I think one of the best things I've seen out of social media and posting and kind of the viral crazes is when people go out to somewhere in nature that's just been crapped on by people, and they clean it up, right? So when people they'll go to a park, or they'll go to a beach where people are just leaving beer bottles and plastic crap all over the place, and they take a before and after picture, and the kids, like the teenagers, the young adults, they're just cheesing it up. They've got big old hefty bags full of garbage, and hopefully it's not all staged, hopefully it's all legit, and they went out there and actually just cleaned up a dirty thing, right? But that, to me, that's like one of the few kernels where I'm like, man, like, if this could really catch on, like, that seems so awesome. If people were just going outside. First off, you're going outside, so you're serving yourself, and secondly, you're serving your community, and you're serving nature, right? So you're terrible saying, but you're killing like 3 birds with 1 stone with this act.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, definitely. So I mean, aquascaping is just so therapeutic and valuable, and I think the more people that are exposed to it, absolutely the better. The better for the person that's doing it, and the better for the people that are enjoying it as well. If you have a nice aquascape and people come to your home, I've had lots of people get inspired by the aquascapes in my place. And generally believe it enriches people's lives.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, I'll preface this next question, and I think we'll conclude with this, because I've taken up about an hour of your time, and you're 8 hours ahead of me, so it's getting late over in England. We've kind of built the profile of who George is, and the amount of work that you've put into this hobby. Doing the research that you've done, the testing, and seeing success, writing articles, writing a book, producing video content, sharing your sharing your passion, does it ever feel surreal? Do you ever look back and like, what would George, in 2002 think of George in 2019 and the path that you've gone down?
Wow, that's a really good question. I'd be very, very surprised, in a good way, I think, to know that I've been able to turn a hobby, stroke obsession, passion into a full-time career. And that's not only made me happy, but made other people happy, and provided, security and, to my family, and enabled me to live a life that I feel has real purpose now. So if I think back to where I was in 2002, I was, just getting married to my first wife in the Royal Air Force. And if I'm honest with myself, back then, I didn't really know what I wanted out of life. I just felt, I was just kind of expected to live this certain life and, do this, do that, work Monday to Friday, have the weekend off to buy stuff to impress the friends that you don't really like. And this treadmill of modern kind of expected life was pretty mundane and didn't really make me happy. I didn't know it at the time because I didn't know what I wanted. But I think through discovering something I'm so passionate about with aquascaping, and then turning that passion into a semi-professional career with just the freelance writing whilst I was in the Air Force, and then making that transition from that semi-professional into full-time professional to where I am now as someone that's very fortunate to be in a position where I do the traveling, do the video creating and the writing and the influencing. I'm not a massive word of the fan influencing, but I think it's fairly relevant. I think I'll be quite proud of actually being able to achieve what I have done. But it's been a journey, and there's been a lot of challenges along the way. For every great Instagram and Facebook post and video post, there's been a lot of hardship and literally blood, sweat, and tears that have gone in, behind the scenes to create this. So I don't want people to think, George has just made it and made it look really easy. I suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. I have anxiety, and I did have depression. That's all kind of okay, but I'm very, very grateful to do what I do right now. And just chatting to you, Randy, it's really, made me realise how lucky and to have this opportunity, and how grateful I am to, make a happy life out of something that I love doing.
Yeah, no, I think that's, very, very well said. The hard work, the determination, the long hours, the effort that's been put forth. I mean, these are all fruits that you should be able to experience, and the fact that you can, pivot, do the travel, enjoy what you're doing. And for those that don't do a lot of traveling for work, I did 2 years of 2 or 3 times a month traveling. It can be fun when you get to your destination, but traveling sucks. Like, traveling can take like spending a lot of time at the airports, dealing with rental cars, all of this stuff. It taxes, and so it's good with the bad. And everything that you're experiencing now, I fully believe is because of the hard work and dedication that you've put into it. And that if somebody is as equally as passionate about any of their hobbies and pursuits and interests, if they took that same energy, right, and dedication that you put in, or anybody that, rises to the top of their profession or their field or their interest, you would be successful. They would be successful in those pursuits and interests. But the difference is that some of us, we just, and myself included, at times I just kind of throw in the towel and I don't, I don't put my full into it. But so all that to say, good on you. If people are gonna throw shade, then that's on them. But from my perspective, from everything that I've seen, this is all good stuff. It's all well and deserved, and I hope you continue to travel and continue to spread the positive works and the positive influence that you're doing.
Thanks, Randy. I appreciate it.
All right, George. Like I said, I've taken up way too much of your time this evening, but this has been a fantastic conversation. I'm so glad that we had a chance to connect, and I hope everybody out there listening enjoyed it as well. So, George, thank you very much.
Thank you, Randy. You take care, mate.